Welcome back to Odd Occasions, your go-to channel for exploring the eerie and unexplained. In today's video, we're diving into a chilling topic: serial killers who have slipped through the cracks of justice, even in the 21st century. From modern-day monsters who preyed on victims in big cities, to mysterious slayings in small, quiet towns, these killers have somehow avoided capture. Brace yourselves as we count down 10 terrifying American serial killers who are still at large and still getting away with it. Number 10. Little Rock Slasher. As a result of stabbing incidents that took place in Little Rock, Arkansas, between August 2020 and April 2021, 3 individuals were killed. And, chillingly, a 4th person was attacked but survived. All of these stabbings occurred in the early morning hours, between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m., within the same area of the city. The identity of the attacker? Still unknown. Surveillance cameras captured images of someone wandering the neighborhoods during the time of the attacks, but it hasn't led to an arrest. Now here's where it gets even more disturbing. The 4th victim, the one who survived, gave a description to the police. She said her attacker was a tall, slender black man, likely in his early 20s. He approached her while she was walking through town, and without any warning, without a single word, he began stabbing her repeatedly until she lost consciousness. The police in Little Rock immediately increased their patrols throughout the city, focusing especially on the area where these horrifying stabbings occurred. Vigilante groups even promised to track down the attacker. But, as of today, no arrests have been made, and since April 2021, there have been no confirmed stabbings linked to this individual. Has he stopped? Has he moved on? Or is he lying in wait, preparing to strike again? Detectives continue their search, hoping they find him before he begins his attacks once more. And this is just the beginning. Stay tuned as we reveal even more terrifying killers who are still lurking in the shadows, right here in America. Number 9. South Memphis Prostitute Killer. There was a serial murderer who stalked the streets of South Memphis from the end of January to the end of February 2011. Within just 1 month, this killer took the lives of 4 female sex workers, all operating in a tough neighborhood in Tennessee. Each of these horrific shootings took place either inside or right next to Met Carmel Cemetery. And here's where it gets even more disturbing. During the day, cemetery visitors would stumble upon the bodies of these women, their lifeless forms scattered among the graves. Shocked, they would immediately contact the authorities. When investigators arrived at the scene, they found the same grim picture every time: a female sex worker shot to death, and almost no clues left behind. But then, in February 2011, something changed. One woman, the only one who managed to survive the killer's attack, escaped. Though she had been shot, she somehow got away and made it to a hospital where she recovered. Her testimony? Crucial. She told the police the shooter was a young black man, likely in his early 20s, with a distinct hairstyle, cornrows, and, importantly, she remembered the car he drove. It was a dark vehicle, either a Chrysler 300 or a Dodge Charger. Memphis police strongly suspected all 4 murders were connected, and then they found something that gave them hope: DNA. They collected DNA from all 4 crime scenes, and it belonged to the same person. But there was a catch. There were 2 major challenges. First, all the victims were sex workers. This meant there was the possibility that the same innocent John could have been with them before they died, complicating the investigation. Second, the DNA didn't match anyone in the crime databases. Not yet. Police are waiting, hoping that someday this DNA will match a person who gets arrested or has a run-in with the law. But as of now, The 4 shootings and 3 unsolved murders remain a dark mystery. We're not done yet. Stay tuned as we continue to explore more serial killers still on the loose, right here in the U.S. Number 8. Boca Raton Town Center Murders. In 2007, a series of high-profile kidnappings and killings took place at the Boca Raton Town Center Mall in South Florida. These crimes were brazen, carried out in the middle of the day, and they grabbed national attention for good reason. Even more chilling, law enforcement officials were never able to determine who was responsible. It all began in March of that year when a 52-year-old woman was kidnapped from the mall's parking lot. She was forced into her vehicle, taken away, and later found murdered. But then, in December, the horror escalated. A 47-year-old woman and her 7-year-old daughter were kidnapped from the same shopping center. They were later found bound in rope, both shot in the head inside the mother's SUV. It was an unimaginable tragedy. After this second brutal kidnapping and murder, police disclosed yet another chilling detail. Back in August of that year, there had been another kidnapping at the same shopping center. This time, a mother and her 2-year-old son were taken and tied up inside their vehicle. The police suspected that this incident, while not fatal, was similar to, if not directly connected to, the others. Thankfully, the mother and her child were left physically unharmed. But despite the pattern, despite the shocking nature of these crimes, no one has ever been arrested. To this day, investigators remain just as baffled. Who was responsible for these horrifying attacks? Why did they target these women and children? And how did the killer manage to escape undetected? The mystery lingers, unsolved. Stay with us as we continue to uncover more chilling tales of serial killers who've slipped through the cracks of justice. Number 7. Eastbound Strangler. During October and November of 2006, a serial killer known as the Eastbound Strangler was active in and around Atlantic City, New Jersey. Despite a significant reward being offered for information leading to the killer, he's never been caught. What makes this case even more disturbing is that the killer stopped just as suddenly as he started. But within the span of 1 month, 4 women, all sex workers, were found strangled to death. The bodies of all 4 women were discovered at the same time and in the same place. On November 20th, 2006, their bodies were found in a drainage ditch in Egg Harbor Township, right behind the Golden Key Motel, on the outskirts of Atlantic City, where the bright lights of the casinos give way to darkness. The scene was chilling. All 4 women, submerged in shallow water, face down, arranged in a line about 60 feet apart from each other. They were clothed, but strangely enough, their shoes and socks were missing. The name Eastbound Strangler was coined for 2 reasons. First, it was concluded that all 4 women had likely been strangled to death, despite the state of decomposition. And second, all of the bodies were oriented toward the east. Other than that, there was little for investigators to work with. All 4 victims were sex workers, making it difficult to determine exactly when they disappeared, and who they had been with before their lives were tragically taken. Over the years, multiple individuals have been questioned in connection with the murders, but no arrests have been made. Investigators even conducted 2 separate investigations to see if the Eastbound Strangler was connected to the more infamous Gilgo Beach serial killings on Long Island. But those links were conclusively ruled out, and so the mystery of the Eastbound Strangler lingers, unsolved. Keep watching as we uncover more cases of terrifying killers who remain on the loose and still evade justice. Number 6. The Jeff Davis ADOS scene. Between 2005 and 2009, the bodies of 8 women were discovered in the wetlands and canals surrounding the small town of Jennings, Louisiana. Jennings is an oil town nestled in Jefferson Davis Parish, far in the southern part of the state, between Lafayette and Lake Charles. It's the kind of place that's typically overlooked, quiet, rural, and out of the way. That is, until women started turning up dead. The deaths drew the attention of local and state law enforcement. In a small town like Jennings, most of these women knew each other, or at least knew of each other, but beyond those surface-level connections, investigators struggled to find any real link between the victims. One major challenge? The state of the bodies. When the remains were found, they were so badly decomposed that it was almost impossible to determine even basic details like the cause of death. This, of course, slowed the investigation considerably. Frustrated by the lack of progress, the media got involved. Investigative journalists began digging into the case, and what they uncovered was disturbing. They found that police efforts had been riddled with errors and a lack of concrete evidence. Even more troubling, there was division within the sheriff's office about whether a single serial killer was responsible for all 8 deaths, or if multiple killers were at work in Jennings. And frankly, we're not sure which possibility is more terrifying. But here's where things get even darker. Reporters who dove deep into the case spoke to individuals who made shocking claims that law enforcement might be involved in the deaths. Rumors of corruption within the police force, shady deputies, and drug rings operating out of law enforcement facilities have persisted for years. To this day, no one has ever been charged for the murders of the Jeff Davis 8. The killer, or killers, remain unknown. Stay with us as we continue exploring more chilling, unsolved cases of serial killers who've slipped through the cracks right here in America. Number 5. West Mesa Bone Collector. In 2009, a shocking discovery was made in the desert, west of Albuquerque, New Mexico. The remains of at least 11 women were found, and with them, the legend of the West Mesa Bone Collector came to light. Speculation ran wild. Several individuals were suspected, but to this day, no one has ever been charged. What's even more chilling, authorities still wonder if these killings were connected to a larger sex trafficking network, one that moved women across Mexico, Central America, and the southwestern United States. Based on satellite imagery and urban development plans, investigators determined that these 11 women were buried on an arroyo bank over the span of several years from 2001 to 2005. Satellite images taken between 2003 and 2005 show tire tracks and patches of disturbed earth right at the exact spot where the bodies were later uncovered. In 2006, a housing development began expanding over this land. For 3 years, the site remained untouched, until in 2009, a woman walking her dog made a grim discovery. The rain and floods had disturbed the earth, causing even more bones to resurface. By the end of the investigation, police had found the bodies of 11 females, some possibly minors. Among the remains, they also found a fetus, buried in the same area. The women's ages ranged from 15 to 32 years old. All of them had histories linked to prostitution, sex work, and/or drug addiction. DNA testing positively identified many of the victims, painting a tragic picture of their lives before they disappeared. Since the discovery, Albuquerque police have received numerous tips, some pointing to a Central American suspect involved in a large prostitution ring. But the truth behind these leads remains uncertain. To this day, there are no solid answers, and the West Mesa Bone Collector remains at large. The chilling mysteries don't end here. Stick with us as we delve deeper into more unsolved serial killings in America. Number 4. Maine South Woodsman. The Maine South Woodsman is the name given to a serial killer who operated in Worcester, Massachusetts between 2002 and 2007. And to this day, he remains unidentified. The killer targeted at least 3 to 5 prostitutes, all from the main South neighborhood of Worcester. That's how he earned his ominous nickname. Each of his victims was a Hispanic woman, between the ages of 29 and 42. They were known to the authorities due to their involvement in prostitution and, in many cases, struggles with drug addiction. As the murders continued, law enforcement, along with the FBI, was able to build an unusually detailed psychological profile of the killer. According to their findings, the Maine South Woodsman was likely a blue-collar worker, someone like a truck driver, or a maintenance man. Several witnesses reported seeing him driving a pickup truck or an SUV. He was probably a frequent visitor to the red light district of Worcester, familiar with both the streets and the women who worked there. But despite these clues and years of pleading with the Worcester community for help, investigators never uncovered any solid leads. In 2008, police finally named a person of interest, Alex Chesney. Chesney had a dark past with documented sexual abuse early in life, and he had already been convicted of the murder of another prostitute in an unrelated case. However, despite being behind bars, Chesney was never charged with the Maine South murders. Aside from his name being revealed as a person of interest, investigators have never been able to find enough concrete evidence to definitively link him to the killings. And so, the series of brutal murders in Maine South remains unsolved. The identity of the Maine South Woodsman is still a mystery. Don't go anywhere. We've still got more terrifying unsolved cases to uncover as we continue our countdown of American serial killers who remain at large. Number 3. Chicago Strangler. Over the past 23 years, at least 50 women have been murdered, strangled, and their bodies discarded in and around the city of Chicago. All of the victims were African American women. Many of them worked in the sex industry or as prostitutes. And all of them were killed in an eerily similar fashion. They were strangled, stripped, partially or completely, and then abandoned in places like alleyways, garbage cans, or abandoned buildings. As these murders began to pile up, Chicago police took notice. They launched an investigation into the recent homicides and discovered that some of these cases did lead to arrests. More than a dozen different suspects were apprehended, meaning that some of the victims have seen justice. But that's only part of the story. There are still scores of unsolved murders, cases that remain cold with no leads, no suspects, and no accountability. Even more troubling, the community is growing increasingly fearful that these murders may be linked. They suspect that those working in the sex industry in Chicago's most dangerous neighborhoods are being targeted and killed. If any of these murders are connected, it means the killer, or killers, have been operating for 2 decades without being caught. Community organizers have called on Chicago police to do more. The Murder Accountability Project, a group that uses algorithms and data analysis to find patterns in unsolved murders, has concluded that many of these cases may be linked by proximity and timing. But, despite this, no real progress has been made in the search for the so-called Chicago Strangler. The hunt for answers continues. Stay with us as we uncover more unsolved cases of American serial killers who remain at large. Number 2. Kauai Serial Killer. Kauai, the Garden Isle of Hawaii, is known for its breathtaking beauty, a tropical paradise in the United States. But for several months in the summer of 2000, it became a living nightmare for the women who lived there. Between April and August of that year, 2 women were brutally stabbed to death by a killer who would remain unidentified. A 3rd woman was also attacked, but miraculously, she survived. Thanks to her escape, the survivor was able to provide the police with enough information to create a detailed composite sketch of the suspect. Even more crucially, the authorities were able to recover the suspect's DNA from rape kits used on the survivor. as well as from the two victims who tragically lost their lives. But despite having DNA evidence, investigators hit a dead end. None of the samples they had on file matched, and the killer remained out of reach. In their desperate search for answers, the police questioned 70 individuals who were listed as sexual offenders on the island, yet none of them were deemed worthy of further investigation. Eventually, their attention turned to a man who had been convicted of rape and kidnapping on the island of Oahu 17 years earlier. He had been released from prison in 1999 and moved to Kauai shortly after. In late 2000, this suspect was arrested for violating his parole. His DNA was collected and compared to the samples from the crime scenes. But, to the authorities' frustration, the DNA did not match. As a result, he was never charged with the murders. And so, the Kauai serial killer, the only one in the island's history, no further information about him has ever come to light. We're getting closer to revealing our top unsolved case. Stay with us for more chilling stories of serial killers who still roam free. Number 1. The I-70 Killer. In the spring of 1992, a chilling series of murders shook the Midwest. An unidentified serial killer, known as the I-70 Killer, targeted store clerks across small towns and truck stops. He struck at least 6 times, and all of the crime scenes were located along the stretch of the infamous Interstate 70 highway. But despite the panic and the investigations, he was never caught. Fast forward to late 1993 and early 1994. A similar string of shootings took place across Texas. The police weren't sure if it was the same killer, but the methods were eerily similar. A task force was formed, and suddenly, authorities were facing the grim possibility that they were dealing with a serial murderer, one who had been operating undetected across multiple states, and for multiple years. But that's not where this story ends. Why are we bringing up these murders now, when they date back to the 1990s? Because the I-70 Killer resurfaced over 10 years later. In 2001, a store clerk at a gas station in Terre Haute, Indiana, right off Interstate 70, was shot and killed. At first, it seemed like just another tragic incident, but by November 2021, police made a breakthrough. They confirmed, beyond a doubt, that this murder was connected to the earlier killings. It was the same killer. And then, another twist. Security camera footage from the 2001 murder showed the killer approaching the store before the attack. The location? Just 7 blocks away from a previous murder linked to the I-70 Killer. Over a decade earlier, he had returned to his old hunting grounds, stalking the same area years later. The footage provided investigators with a flood of new leads. They've identified several persons of interest, and tips have pointed to the possibility that the killer may be living in Indianapolis. But despite all this progress, the answer still eludes them. As of mid-2024, no arrests have been made, and authorities have yet to release the name of their person of interest or any potential suspects. These stories are both haunting and unsettling. Despite modern technology, DNA advancements, and relentless law enforcement efforts, these killers continue to evade capture, lurking in the shadows. If you found this video intriguing, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Odd Occasions for more deep dives into the strange, the mysterious, and the downright terrifying. Stay safe, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next video.